Hello and welcome to today's webinar. We're talking about the changing landscape of search and how your brand can capture more demand. I'm Erin Martin, the VP of Marketing at NetCertive, and I'm really excited to have our amazing Google partner, Abhi Moses, back to host with me. Abhi's the agency development manager at Google and has a ton of insights for us today. And so just a few housekeeping items. We will send out the deck and recording in the next few days so that you have it. And we're not going to do any live questions today. So if you do have anything, we'd be happy to follow up and get that answered. So you can enter any questions in the Q&A window. And we are going to try to keep this to around 45 minutes so that you can have a bathroom break before your next meeting. And before we dive in, just a quick note on NetCertive. We help franchise, multi-location retailers, and automotive brands run localized digital marketing at scale. We have over 100 multi-location brand partners and absolutely love what we do. I literally say this all the time, but only because it's true, but I get to spend my days marketing to a bunch of marketers about marketing, and it's freaking awesome. So if you ever want to geek out on digital marketing with us, definitely hit us up. And today we're going to mostly be hearing from Abhi on all the latest trends and best practices as it relates to search. And then we're going to close it out with a case study that shows a really robust localized campaign in action that pulls in search and all of those pieces together. So with that, I'll kick it over to Abhi to dive in and share some of the latest trends.
Awesome. We can go to the next slide. So before I fully deep dive into search, which we're going to be doing a lot of technical strategy and best practices today, almost too much. But before we dive in fully, I do want to touch on the evolution of search and how we're trending. I'm not sure if any of you have had a chance to tune into Search On 2022, which was about a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. But we basically touched on multi-search, visual search, and all these different facets of search and how we're evolving for the future and how that will actually affect your Google Ads strategy. Didn't talk about that in Search On 2022, but I will talk about how we can help change your strategy for the future, and automated targeting, and how that's becoming more of an more of an important strategy moving forward. So if we go to the next slide, we have while we are going to go through a lot of the general search trends and strategy, I did want to note the importance of your localizing your strategies. I know Erin towards the end will talk about a hyper local strategy and how NetCertive works in these areas. But I do want to say that all the strategies that I'm going to talk about today can also be employed at the local level. So while we go through this webinar, make sure that you're challenging yourself to think about the different strategies that you're going to use. So you can use these at the national scale, and you can also use this at the local scale. And you can see some of the stats here. 90% of global shoppers who visited a store in the last week said they used online search prior to going in the store. So you can see that the lines of online to offline are being blurred a little bit more today, more than ever. And then can I or to buy plus near me on mobile searches have grown over 6 times in the past 2 years. So this is increasingly becoming a thing. Search is becoming part of normal life. So we want to make sure that we're changing our strategies based on getting people to come to your store, as well as looking at it online. So we can move on. So now back to automated targeting and how to adjust your strategies moving forward. It really is as straightforward as using broad match keywords with smart bidding and responsive search ads. This will be your trifecta moving forward. So just going through the 3 broad match keywords, this will help you find new higher performing queries and emerging trends. We're going to concentrate on this aspect for the first part of the webinar. Smart bidding helps optimize bids in real time to hit your performance goals, even as query volume and conversion values change. So that's going to be like the sister counterpart to broad match keywords. That's been around for 5-6 years. So you should definitely be using that already. It's not like it's a new product. And then responsive search ads, they combine your creativity with the power of Google's machine learning to help you deliver relevant ads at the right time. So This has, I think, become the default for search ads in general. So you're probably pretty aware of that, and probably, probably have a solid expertise in this area. But moving forward, this is a diagram that showcases the difference between broad keyword strategy versus exact and phrase match strategy. So the exact and phrase match strategy were the gold standard a few years ago. But as you know, our products and consequently our best strategic recommendations change almost annually. So the main key benefits for broad match keyword usage are, number one, it's less time consuming to manage fewer keywords. So you're actually going to get more with less out of this strategy. And then number two, you cast a wider net to capture demand and intent in the ever-growing complex search landscape. So you can see it in the visualization above. But basically, there are little nooks and crannies that broad match keywords can still get in terms of search queries and showing up in search queries versus exact and phrase match. So on the next slide, we can see kind of an example of, if you were using phrase match for tennis shoes, the left column shows which search ads you might show up in versus the right, which shows a certain amount of intent, shows a situation where you wouldn't be showing up for phrase match, but you would if you were using broad match. So you are going to be leaving out, this is like parts of the nooks and crannies I was saying, you'll be missing out on these opportunities if you aren't using broad match. So in addition to more search coverage and easier account management, on average, large budget unconstrained auto bidders upgrading their phrase and broad match modifier keywords to broad match will see an increase of 25% more conversions for target CPA campaigns and 12% more conversion value for target ROAS campaigns while meeting their efficiency goals. And we actually see a better result for changing exact match over to broad match keywords, or you see 35% more conversions for target CPA campaigns and 20% more value in target ROAS campaigns. This is between phrase match and exact match and contextual signals, which you're going to need in the future of search, that broad match does use and exact and phrase match do not use. So that's kind of a key differentiator in this process. However, as well as broad match works, there are occasions where it shouldn't be used. So anything performance related with conversion-based bidding strategies like smart bidding, you should be using broad match keywords, but exact match is recommended in the following scenarios. So any non-conversion based bidding strategies like maximizing your impression share, or if you're using a manual bidding strategy for whatever reason, definitely use exact match keywords. If your intent is to protect your brand for branded search, just make sure you use exact match in those situations as well. And then if you have a need for type creative to match keyword relevance, then you can definitely use exact match. But before we move on from broad match keywords, I do want to leave you with one caveat. When launching broad match keywords, stay on top of your search terms and check the report daily for 2 weeks, because as you are casting a wider net, like if we're just looking at an analogy and say you're fishing, you're trying to get fish, you cast a wide net, you're going to get some things in there like crabs that you aren't trying to get when you're fishing for fish. So what you want to do is basically create a filter. So find these terms, put in your negative keyword list, and then once you hone it all in over the first 2 to 3 weeks, you'll actually start seeing better performance. And then you can kind of just set it and forget it.
Negative keyword lists are so important.
All right. So I also wanted to touch on a topical trend given the current economic climate. People are more conscious about how they're spending their money and evaluating purchases from a value and durability perspective, given the challenging times that we're facing. So I highly suggest highlighting some of these facets in your ad creative, including deals and promotions if you can. You can see some of the interesting stats here. This was from actually a September study that we had at Google. But not only will this attract potential new customers, but you'll also have the ability to use this to help with your brand loyalty with your current customers. So to me, I thought the most eye-popping stat was that 73% of consumers said they're willing to continue buying from companies that increase prices if they feel valued as a customer. So make sure that you're hitting them back on remarketing lists or customer match lists, and you're showcasing the value of your brand, because this will also help repeat buyers and then increase that lifetime customer value. All right, so now we're going to jump into the holiday season. This is, we're going to do a very brief version of this because this is a very robust topic. But I'm going to try to give you the highest level tidbits to help you with your strategy. So before we dive into the actual timeline and strategic best practices, the key themes for 2022 is number one, early preparedness. Not only is this the key to a successful holiday strategy in terms of planning for budgets and whatnot, but now more than ever are people doing holiday shopping before the actual traditional holidays and cyber holidays. So people are currently right now shopping for their holiday presents. So what you want to do is make sure that you're doing it early and you're present at all times for these potential customers. And then the second theme is the continued blurring of the lines between online and offline retail. As we noted in one of the first slides, 90% of people at least search a company before they visit it in person. And then the third trend, this is almost a no-brainer, just keeping up with the latest trends. So you can look at that through Google Trends, looking at your account insights, just following the news, whatever it may be. And then the fourth trend is leaning into automation, because it's able to continue optimizing, targeting, and bidding at all seconds of the day in a way that a human can't. So especially with how complex search is becoming, this is going to be even more important moving forward. So to break it out in terms of key dates for the holiday season, we have 3 separate timeframes, one of which we've already passed. We'll deep dive into these different, the 3 separate portions of preparation, activation, and acceleration in the next slide. But I also wanted to highlight on the right some of the key dates. Obviously, you're probably pretty well aware of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and that whole deal, and Christmas. But there are some other key dates that you might not be thinking about, but you can actually probably capitalize on as an advertiser. So take a quick screenshot if you can, circle those dates on your calendar and look into potential strategies to help activate in that time frame. But if we go to the next slide, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the holiday timeline. So preparation is August to September. If you haven't completed these objectives yet, you need to get this done as soon as possible. If you are stretched or if you have limited time, in my opinion, the most important ones are checking your feed health, check your conversion tagging is working correctly, and then review your budgets and bid strategies for the holiday season. I'm going to talk about a tool that will help you with that in just a little bit. But the next phase, and the phase we should be in right now, is the activate portion, which is September through November. So we're already halfway through that. And right now, you should be gradually increasing your advertising budgets to making sure that you're present, as we just talked about on the slide before. Fine-tuning your bidding strategies, checking your remarketing tags, adding customer match lists, and generating more demand through upper funnel tactics like Discovery, YouTube, and Performance Max. And then in November and December, you really should already be in cruise control, but you should be in a full monitoring stage and making changes as needed. So if you're overhauling your creative strategy or whatever strategies you're doing in November and December, I think you're going to be leaving some money on the table. So make sure you get ahead of that now. But this includes, so for November, December, you should be including checking your performance, making sure you're meeting your goals, allocating or reallocating budgets where needed, swapping out your standard creative for holiday theme creatives, and then adding sales and promotions if you want to help drive additional sales. So my personal top recommendations for the holiday season, I have 4 buckets. The first bucket is bidding. Bidding with target ROAS and making sure you're hitting your business goals. So if you're able to pull in actual revenue and conversion values, you 100% should be bidding on target ROAS, because that's how you can manage your bidding strategies while having the closest thing to maintaining profitability from a business objective. There's no other bid strategy that can do it as well as target ROAS. The second bucket are budgets. So making sure your budgets aren't running out on your busiest days and causing you to leave money on the table. My recommendation would be setting an ambitious budget. So setting more than you're probably comfortable with spending, but setting a target ROAS. Because what you can do is achieve your sales goals or greatly exceed them while maintaining the efficiency that you need to be profitable as a business. So you might not have projected that you're going to drive that many sales, but as long as you're continuing to meet your sustainability or your profitability, then you should be able to almost uncap if you can continue to reach those efficiencies. And then, as discussed before, in terms of coverage, using broad match keywords and smart bidding together for that additional coverage. And then the final recommendation is using Performance Max as your main counterpart to search campaigns. So in a few slides, I'm going to go into this in detail and the importance of getting used to it because it's going to play a big part of Google's future. But before that, we're going to talk about Performance Planner. This is my favorite tool in Google Ads, not to be confused with Performance Max. I know everything's performance. But this is a tool that you can find within your account. But it also gives you the ability to predict clicks, conversions, and conversion values with the data from your account, but also coupling that with Google Ads auction data from recent times and in real time. So what that does is it gives you realistic projections. This has been around for a few years now. Not enough advertisers, in my opinion, use it. It's pretty accurate, in my opinion. And I think as a result, you'll be able to better understand how much of an investment that you can make while making sure you're hitting your business objectives and maintaining that profitability metric. So there are 3 key benefits for using Performance Planner, anticipating, growing, and innovating. For anticipating, you can check industry and account data to plan ahead for peak times. It does take into account the different, holiday season, and if it's peak time in your industry, let's say you're in home services, in some of the summer months, those could be your peak times. So it does take into account auction data from those times and adjust accordingly. For grow, you can gauge how much of an investment you want to make in order to grow your business meaningfully and profitably. And then for innovate, you can click through the scenarios in real time within the tool to figure out what you want to do moving forward, and you can actually apply that within the tool. So you don't even need to manually go in and change each campaign. It'll do that for you if you want to. But as for timing and when to use Performance Planner, I do recommend using this for all portions of your Google Ads planning. So from an annual perspective, I would definitely lean on this tool to give you almost a ballpark number. Obviously, things will change throughout the year. We can't, foresee. We don't have a crystal ball to see what's going to happen throughout the year. So use this as a baseline number, and then take into account, what other things that you think can affect it. But then each quarter, prior to each quarter begins, you should be checking this, to make sure that you're hitting toward, you have accurate projections. But then also once a month throughout the quarter to ensure that you're pacing correctly to hit your quarterly objectives. So at the bare minimum, once a month, but I would urge you to use this tool for all planning aspects of Google Ads. All right, now we're going to get into Performance Max. This is a very important product for Google moving forward. This is a newer campaign type that should be complementary to all search campaigns, and that's now a Google best practice. We've seen some amazing results. I think it was released last year. It was in beta for, I think, a couple of years, but whether your goal is to drive online sales or let's say you're a lead gen advertiser, this is a campaign that can be used for all situations. And to hit on the general theme of automation and what we've been talking about in automating the future of, utilizing automation for the future of your ad strategy, this could be the future of Google Ads because it has the automation power to target your potential customers, but also has the capability to do it across all of the Google platforms at any time when the data signals think it's most powerful to serve your ad. So don't think of this just as a way to capture demand, but also think of it as a performance product, because right after search, this is going to be probably the most efficient of our ad campaigns. And then on top of that, because it's going to be across all of our channels, it will help funnel more demand into search. So there's a nice symbiotic relationship between the two. So as I noted, this product will serve across all of our channels. So it's almost a one-stop shop solution to be omnipresent to all potential customers. It spans across shopping. If you are a retail advertiser, if you're not a retail advertiser, it will not be on shopping. Gmail, search, YouTube, Discover, display, and maps. And a quick tip is to use as many ad assets as possible, because it gives our algorithm more potential combinations to create ads across the various channels. And what that'll do is it'll give our algorithm the ability to learn what are the most powerful ads and actually disperse that and optimize it for the future. So the more the merrier. And then if we want to move on to the next slide, yeah, we have just the foundational Performance Max best practices checklist. So if this is your first time, if you haven't set up a Performance Max campaign and it's your first time setting it up, or if you want to fine tune your current campaign because it's not, performing as well as you'd hoped, these are some of the foundational best practices that I can share with you. So when you're setting up your campaign and you have limited conversion volume, set an artificially low target ROAS or target CPA, depending on your bid strategy. But consider increasing the target once the algorithm learns what's a good customer and what's a bad customer. And then the next thing is, and this is kind of a general theme here, conversion volume is key. Like any algorithm, it will do better when it has more data inputs. So if you don't have enough conversion data for one campaign, don't try to create another campaign and try to gain more conversion volume, because all you're going to do is just spread yourself too thin. What I would recommend is, increase the opportunity to gather more conversion data within the first campaign. And then once you have more information and it starts learning, hey, this is a good audience to reach out to, it will naturally start to build more. It's like a snowball effect, it'll start to notice that and start to target that type of customer more, and then it'll start to gain more conversions. And then give more data input, and then it'll continue to snowball and get better from there. And then if you're a retail advertiser, make sure your data quality and Merchant Center meets the quality standard. Otherwise, you'll see disapprovals, and then you're going to see poor performance, and then you're going to come back to Aaron and I and get angry that you even tried Performance Max in the first place, and we don't want that. And then just some of the final ones, make sure your conversion tracking is firing properly. You get extra kudos if you're able to pump in dynamic conversion values. As we said, that using that as your profitability bidding strategy is the best case scenario. And then my final recommendation is actually outside of Google Ads. Make sure your website loads fast. The threshold is 2.5 seconds. That's kind of what we deem as, hey, you load fast, hey, you don't load fast. I don't have the data point off the top of my head, but I think it's like 90% of people abort trying to load a website after 3 seconds. So you don't want to lose that potential customer if your site isn't loading fast, because that's something that's super easy to fix. So we do have a Think with Google tool where you can test your site speed, and then you can easily Google that. But other than that, that's kind of my my best practices for Performance Max. But I will pass it to Aaron now.
Awesome. Thanks, Abhi. And I know at NetCertive, we've been testing out Performance Max for the past 3 months in anticipation of integrating this into our own in-house tech to kind of combine that automation piece that you're talking about, Abhi, as well as with our own localization technology to combine those two. And we've been seeing the average cost per conversion improve ourselves as well. So I do have a case study to share in a second for you guys. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to note that I think one of the big takeaways from the Search On 2022 that you mentioned, Abhi, and just the future of search and how it will be more multidimensional, you know, and involved in different ways. I think one of the big takeaways for me was that while the way people search and discover information may change, and it's never going to stop evolving, there's always going to be a huge local intent or local component to it. Like when I'm searching for information, I'm looking for something in my backyard. So as brand marketers, we need to ensure that the entire customer journey is hyper local and hyper relevant to meet those local needs, you know, however someone's looking for information. And automation, being able to automate that localization is a great way to do that. So to distill kind of all that, let's look at a quick example of what building a great local experience looks like that's inclusive of search, but also takes into consideration some other channels as well. And so this example is a localized digital marketing campaign that we've been running for a retailer who we've been working with for years. They have over 5 different brands that they're promoting across 32 locations and a catalog of hundreds of products that they're trying to sell. So when we launched the campaign, we were really focused on high intent, high demand core digital channels that included search, display, and website retargeting. And we knew that we needed to personalize these hundreds of variables to make sure that that individual digital experience was hyper-local and hyper-relevant. And so our platform automated the localization of all of those variables at scale. It hyper-localized the creative, account setup, the keyword strategy and list, the negative keyword list, like we had talked about, the media budget, which ensured that each local consumer was getting the most relevant experience to move the needle for them. And then it also ensured that the local domain authority and structure was in place for Google and other search engines to rank their results higher, since algorithms have evolved to prioritize for this local intent. And so within a few months, we started seeing really strong return on ad spend. So we expanded and layered in some additional channels that included YouTube and social, with again, that same hyper localized approach. Even the YouTube campaigns used a corporate video with a localized overlay that showed the closest location's address, phone number, and URL. And so it had a brand compliant video ad, but with that local call to action. And then most recently, we folded in Performance Max to extend our local reach into even more placements. So as you can see, the idea here is that everything is really built around ensuring that the exact right digital experience was served to that person's unique local search and specific intent, which requires hyper-localizing every piece of the campaign that's only manageable with automation. And you know, really, if you can win a click or convert a customer 10 more or even 100 times more at that local level, that's where you're going to see performance improve and be able to get more for the same amount of your ad spend. And so here's just a quick snapshot of what I mean by that level of hyper-localization. For this same retailer, we dynamically were able to create 117 localized campaigns across those 32 locations with 344 different ad groups, over 4,000 headlines and descriptions, with over 815 different localized ad creatives across different channels. And then we were able to make 500 monthly ad changes and thousands of campaign optimizations on top of all of that, which is really what's needed to win at that local level. And for this retailer, they've seen some incredible results. We helped them beat their cost per store visit goal. They're seeing an amazing 32-to-1 return on ad spend, and they've increased their online sales as well. And just as cool as the results that we drove is the location level insights that the corporate marketing team could see on their end. So what you're looking at is our customer portal, and this is just one of the views that we have that plots each of the retail location's ROAS on a quad chart. And so the x-axis is return on ad spend, with Y being the ad spend. And that allows both of our teams to easily spot the high and low performers. And so their corporate marketing team loves it because they have more data to make more informed decisions or coach their locations on strategy. As you can see, there's a high correlation of higher ad spend and better ROAS. And you can also see where it eventually peters out, so that you can see that point of diminishing returns to identify when the additional investment is no longer worth it. And then you can also roll over each location and check out the media mix of the high performers to see what's working for them. So what's also awesome about this is anyone can take advantage of this view. It's based on average lead to close percentages and average sale value that you input as an assumption. And so you control it based off of that model. There's no need for a CRM or POS integration. You can basically just model it out with the information that you have right here, which is pretty cool. And that concludes our webinar for today. A huge thank you to Avi for your time and insights. And thank you to everyone who joined. Like I mentioned, we will send out the recording and all the slides so you guys have them, can forward them to your teams. And also, like I said, we're a bunch of marketing geeks over here. So if you want to chat digital marketing or get your own localized digital marketing strategy, hit us up. We'd definitely love to geek out with you. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and thanks again for joining.